Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the slightly late start, but a late apology from one of us. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place at the Walton Suite at Winchester Guildhall. It's Wednesday, the 17th of July, and the time is 9:32 a.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. To my right sits my Vice Chair, Councillor Jonathan Williams. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers. Lorna Hutchings, who's the service head for the built environment, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, our case officers, which will change, not necessarily with each item, but regularly, starting with Liz this morning. Good morning, Liz. And Matthew Watson from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn them on is set out on our website. Please can I remind everyone to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome the members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification when you have finished, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Turning now to the agenda. Should be good if I had it up. Very good. Okay, so Matthew, apologies and deputy members, please.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, members. So we've had apologies from Councillor Clear and Councillor Langford-Smith, which means we've got 7 members of the committee present. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Any disclosures of interest, members? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I need to declare personal but not prejudicial interest in respect of item 13 due to my role as ward member. I have taken no part in discussions regarding the application, therefore I will take part in the consideration of the item and I will vote thereon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Small.
I am ward councillor for item number 14, but I haven't discussed it with anybody.
And Councillor Ashwell?
And same as Councillor Small, item 14, I'm ward councillor, but I haven't spoken to anybody about it.
Not predetermined in any way. Lovely. Any more? No? Thank you very much. Fine. So the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 9 to 12 on your agenda. Can we accept those as an accurate record of the meeting? Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. Would we like to agree the update sheet as an addendum to the report? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, so we now turn to the items before us today, and the first is item number 6 on our agenda. Which is at Ray Howe, 30 Downside Road, Winchester. And our presenting officer is Liz Young. Good morning, Liz, and over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to a proposal to replace an existing house on Downside Road in Winchester with 3 detached houses. It also includes proposals to carry out various associated works, including an internal access road, changes to ground levels, and a couple of outbuildings. Oh. Sorry, slides don't seem to be. We should have the location plan. Let's try again. Hold on. No. Okay. So we've got the aerial view of the property here. Sorry, this was meant to be the location plan. But anyway, you can see here the location of the property, which is marked by the black circle. So the site lies within the built-up area of Winchester on the southern end of Downside Road. Downside Road is a privately maintained highway. It's not a through road to the south, although there is a connecting footpath through to Groveland Road, which is just runs south of the site. So as you can see, much of the site is enclosed by mature vegetation. We've got high density development to the south and also to the west of the site. Downside Road runs north from the site and consists of mainly larger detached houses set in varied plot sizes. This next slide shows the existing site plan, which includes the contours for the site. So you can see here the position of the existing house and also the various outbuildings which are proposed to be removed. The ground slopes up towards the north boundary and also to the rear of the site. Due to the changes in ground levels at present, the house currently sits slightly higher than the level of Downside Road. This next slide shows the proposed site plan for the development. So it consists of 3 detached houses with the larger unit positioned towards the front of the site. This larger unit would be served by a detached double garage. So this is plot 1 here. Then at the rear of the site, there's 2 smaller properties. Plot 2 in the southwest corner would be served by a detached carport. Also, the plans include a proposal to form an internal access road which would provide access to the units at the rear. This next slide just shows the proposed block plan for the site. So it shows the layout of the development in context with existing neighbouring properties. This next slide just shows the landscape plan for the development. So the majority of the existing boundary vegetation would be retained, although some of the lower quality trees are proposed to be replaced with new planting. The hard surfaces would consist of permeable block paving. Boundary treatments would consist mainly of walls and hedgerows, although some close-bordered fencing is proposed on the rear boundary between plots 2 and 3. Including the garaging, plots 1 and 2 would have 3 parking spaces and 2 spaces are proposed to plot 3. This meets the relevant parking standards. This next slide shows the tree constraints plan for the site. The red dotted lines indicate the trees which are to be removed. This includes a cypress tree in the northeast corner next to the access and a cypress hedge along the rear boundary of the site. All removed trees would be replaced with new planting, which would be agreed as part of the landscaping condition as set out in the report. This next slide shows the recommended ecological enhancements which are included in the updated ecology report. So these include new planting within the site and on the boundaries, along with various features for reptiles, hedgehogs and insects. The final details for these measures would be agreed as part of condition 7. So just moving on to the plans for the individual houses. This slide shows the proposed elevations for plot 1, which is the unit to be at the front of the site. Overall height would measure approximately 8.5 metres. Facing materials would consist of facing brickwork and natural slate. This is the garage to plot 1, so this garage would be immediately north of the house and just adjacent to the main access to the site. The materials would match those on the main house. This is the floor plan and roof plan for plot 1. It would consist of 4 bedrooms and would have an overall floor area of just under 280 square metres. This is plot 2, the elevations for plot 2, which would be in the southwest corner of the site. Overall height would be 8 metres, and facing materials would consist of buff coloured facing brickwork and natural slate. And here we've got the roof plan and floor plans for plot 2, which would be 3 bedrooms and approximately 230 square metres overall. This is the proposed carport to plot 2. So this carport would be positioned on the south boundary of the site. Both this and the garage to plot 1 would have an overall height of 4 metres. This is plot 3, which would be in the northwest corner of the site. The same size as plot 2 approximately. So overall height would be 8 metres, although facing materials would consist of off-white render. This is plot 3 proposed roof plan and floor plans. So also this unit would be 3 bedrooms and would have a floor area of 230 square metres. So this next slide shows the cross sections for the site. You can just make out with the red dotted line. Oh, sorry. Let's go back. The red dotted line indicates the existing buildings and ground levels which are to be removed. The majority of excess soil would be removed from the site. So the top image shows the view looking from the south. So this is with the larger front unit, plot 1, and Downside Road on the right hand side. Bottom image shows the view from the north. So this is with plot 1 and Downside Road on the left hand side. The most significant change to ground levels would be at the rear of the site next to plot 3. The ground levels being lowered by approximately 2 metres. The retaining walls, the final details for those would be agreed as part of condition 7. This is just a cross-section view from Downside Road, so looking towards the front boundary of the site. So this is looking towards plot 1, its outbuilding, and the access next to it. Just moving on to the site photos. This is the view as you approach the site along Downside Road from the north. So the access to the site is just further down on the right hand side. This is the view towards the existing access to the site, with the access to the adjacent site in the foreground. So this is the view again from Downside Road looking towards the north boundary of the site. So the site access is just here on the left hand side. This is the view looking north towards the site from Grovelands Road, which lies to the south. This is the view through the existing access. So the existing access is to remain in its current location. This is the view of the existing property. The overall height of the existing house is approximately 8 metres. This is another view towards the existing house, but taken from the rear garden area. Another view looking back towards the rear of this property as it stands at the moment. This is taken from the approximate location of plot 3, which would be in the northwest corner. This is a view looking north from within the site towards number 28, which lies to the north of the property. This is a view looking towards the northwest corner of the site. So this is looking towards the boundary with the rear gardens off Sawyers Close, which lie to the west. This is just another view, closer view looking towards the west boundary of the site, the rear boundary. This final slide is taken looking south along the rear boundary of the site. So that brings us to the end of the slides. The recommendation is that planning permission should be granted. The site lies within the built-up area of Winchester, where the general principle of new dwellings is permitted. It's acknowledged that there's been a number of third-party objections to the proposal. However, it's considered that the amended plans and the additional information put forward by the applicant sufficiently address those concerns. That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We now turn to public speaking, and our first public speakers are Claire and Peter Cook. If you'd like to come forward. Just Claire. Good morning. You have 3 minutes, and the timer will start when you start speaking, so there's no rush. Take your time. Thank you.
On behalf of more than 80 local objectors, we are opposing the proposal for the following reasons: biodiversity and environment. This proposal disregards policies NPPF 136 and CP16 and local neighbourhood design settlement, felling 32 trees and planting 21 young trees on the site and 7 beyond its boundary. Trees define this area and are a vital feature for the whole community. Its ecological health and wildlife, providing shelter, food, roosting, nesting places for protected bats and many species of birds in rapid decline. Trees should be retained wherever possible, and mature trees. With this proposal, this is not achievable. We also fear for the future health of the few hedges and trees to be retained, given the unlawful tree felling, pre-planning, the radical site clearance, large-scale excavation needed and extensive use of glycophosphate proposed on this site, and other negative effects on the environment, such as the insufficient slow worm mitigation measures proposed. There is even in the planning application no recognition that there is a pond and that muntjacs regularly come through this area. The NDS says garden ponds generate a number of invertebrates as part of the food chain. Existing ponds should be retained where possible, or at least replaced with similar water features. No mention of the existing pond is made in the planning documentation, nor is there anything in the block plan to indicate anything equivalent. With regard to privacy, adjoining neighbours in Sawyers Close and Grovelands will lose their privacy and quiet enjoyment of their gardens, with mature trees and hedges removed for larger houses, where young trees and low native hedge plants won't provide adequate screening for many years, and if they survive. The developer ignored NPPF policy 131 and failed to engage with local residents despite claiming to have done so in their planning statement. They failed to post the original orange notice until prompted in time for the application in the summer holidays, and to minimise the likelihood of engagement from and with the local community. Given this disingenuous behaviour, we find it implausible that they would uphold the commitments placed upon them either during or after this build. The proposal should be rejected, as all location and site plan reports are incomplete and inaccurate. The ecology and tree reports, which rejected the initial plans,
I'm afraid that's the end of your 3 minutes. I do apologise for having to stop you. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mrs. Cook, please? Thank you very much. You've been very... Oh, Councillor Laming, thank you.
Just a quick one. You mentioned a pond. How big is the pond?
I would suggest the pond is as large as this area here.
No further questions? Thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Cook. You may return to your seat. If you could just switch off the microphone. There you go. Thank you. Our next public speaker is the local councillor, Councillor Lerny, ward councillor. You know the routine, Councillor Lerny.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me speak. I am here to support the many residents who have objected to this development due to their desire to protect the character of the area, its ecology and biodiversity. I know most of the committee have made site visits to the area, and it is important to reflect on the character of Downside, which in common with Dean Lane and other side streets consists of large leafy trees with homes concealed by hedges and significant trees. With a route from Takedown through to Week, the road is well used and enjoyed by pedestrians. It's not just a quiet back road, it's actually frequently thronged with people. There is a clear distinction and physical delineation between Downside Road, where this is at the far end of the road, and 26 Grovelands, which is on the Takedown estate. And although they're neighbouring plots, 26 should not be used as a reference point. It cannot be seen from Downside Road, and that was shown actually in the photos provided by the planning officer. The St Barnabas West design statement describes both areas, and I quote, "Its semi-rural atmosphere is derived from the number and variety of trees and other plants which support many wildlife species. The tree and hedge-lined roads in one part of the neighbourhood and open plan frontages of the Takedown estate are essential parts of the character of the area. There is space in gardens and between and around buildings." The design statement is very strong on the retention, maintenance and enhancement of biodiverse areas and the retention of existing building lines. This proposal brings the building line further forward, making the very large house proposed very prominent. And although mitigation for the loss of trees and other green features is proposed, there is a considerable increase in hard landscaping, and it will be many years, if ever, before either the biodiversity and visual impact are anything like the existing. I ask the committee to refuse the application, but if you are minded to agree, I think it is essential that the conditions are made and enforced as set out in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lerny. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for our colleague? No? Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lerny. And our final public speaker is Alex King, agent for the developer? Yes. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank members, as I've already done, and officers for the opportunity to speak in support of this application on behalf of my client, Orchard Special Projects Limited, who are a local and regional developer who are committed to this site and its delivery. Prior to the submission of the application, the client team engaged with the council's planning officers via the pre-application process to develop a scheme that accorded with the local and national planning policy that would meet with the aspirations of the community and the requirements of the planning department. During the determination, further changes have been made by ourselves, working with your officers, and the scheme has removed one of the houses, now proposing a scheme of 3 units. Further to this, the applicant has also met with the adjacent neighbours to the north and south, and this has enabled them to explain the development and its benefits, who have since withdrawn their objections. The amendments have been fully set out and considered within the officer's report. As acknowledged within the officer's report, the application site falls within the built-up area of Winchester. The local plan Part 1 Policy WT1 states that the spatial vision for Winchester Town will be achieved in part through the development and redevelopment of existing and other opportunities, existing sites and other opportunities within the adjoining and defined built-up area of Winchester. In respect of the principle, the officer's report concludes that the development would be acceptable. Through working with officers and our architects, the scheme has sought to integrate with the adjacent pattern of development in the locality, as can be seen from the officer's presentation. The scheme proposes individually designed houses which are commensurate in size and scale to the majority of buildings within the vicinity. As such, the design is, we believe, sympathetic with the area and will be detailed to a high quality, which will be secured by condition. In respect to the impact on existing neighbours, The scheme will be within accepting planning policy standards. Moreover, the topography of the site and retention of boundary features would ensure that outlook, light and privacy are respected by the development proposal. Following extensive discussions, the scheme will retain the majority of trees on site and reinforce those that are lost with landscaping and additional trees, which will in turn, we believe and hope, will protect ecology and biodiversity on site. Again, this will be secured by condition. The scheme will also provide an amenity provision that would ensure good levels of private amenity space within the development in line with the council's adopted requirements. The access and parking have met with the council's parking requirements, and those of the Highway Authority, in providing 7 spaces in total. Finally, we've worked hard to present a scheme that is respectful to the site and the area as a whole, providing 2 additional family houses. It's disappointing that there have been so many objections to the scheme, and we'd very much like to deliver a scheme that can be supported, but unfortunately in planning this is not always the case. While there is clearly much more I could add in relation to the opportunity and benefit to this scheme, I hope that this brief synopsis is of use to members and demonstrates Orchards Home's commitments to the scheme. I would also like to thank officers for all their help and support during the determination process, and I hope that our members are able to consider the merits of the scheme and to consider the development favourably. Thank you. Oh, 3 minutes. Well done.
Thank you. Yes, you kept to the time well. Members, do we have questions of clarification? Councillor White first, thank you.
So you just said you'd like to work with the local residents on some of the objections. The objections we've heard are largely about the biodiversity. So are there ways that you would consider kind of mitigating some of that damage to the biodiversity with further things not included in the plan, but extra measures?
I'm sort of going to give a bit of a politician's answer, sorry. I'm sort of going to sidestep it in the sense that I'm obviously not an ecologist. I don't have the sort of relevant benefits and training, but I'm almost certain that my client would be more than happy to entertain that either via condition or informative. The scheme is supported by an ecology statement that's been provided by a chartered ecologist, and obviously has also been assessed by the county's ecologist, and that's been found to be acceptable. They've also suggested conditions which have been suggested within the officer's report.
Councillor Laming?
Yes, I have several questions. You might as well ask them in succession.
No, carry on.
Okay. You show car parking for the houses, but there's no space for any visitor parking. That road is very narrow, so how do you propose visitors park?
Again, a bit of a politician's answer, I'm afraid. We've obviously provided the spaces that are required, that are in line with the adopted standards in terms of parking spaces. So we've got 3 spaces for the 4-bed unit and then 2 spaces each for both of the 3 beds. So that's believed to be sufficient by your highways officers to be sufficient. Obviously, the road sort of terminates in a cul-de-sac, as you could see from the officers' photos of the site. So I know there's a footpath through, but there's obviously the ability for a very small amount of on-street parking, which is directly in front of the site.
Yeah, I mean, the parking that we have in our policies refers to that, really, to the parking that the owners will need. It does create problems with parking.
Councillor Laming, could you be just a little clearer, please? Because we're finding it difficult to understand what you're saying.
Okay, sorry.
But also, if you could just restrict yourself to questions rather than making comments.
Yeah, I'm asking, the question is really where will the visitors park, because
I think the developer has just answered that. Thank you.
And the second point is I can't see any reference to car charging for any of the properties.
Okay, thank you. That would be the car charging point would be secured by condition or used usually through building regulations. I believe it's now a statutory requirement for every new dwelling to have a EV charging point.
I think it is in the report, Councillor Laming.
Yeah, I'm just clarifying things so people can understand that. I noticed on the plans you've got no solar power on that. Are you planning to put any on there?
Yes, we could put solar panels or air source heat pumps. I mean, that would be certainly something that my client would be looking at, because obviously there's a benefit for the operation of the houses when they're eventually inhabited.
Yeah, wouldn't you build them in? Because we're looking at how we reduce our energy requirements. The increase in biodiversity of 10%. Are you going to be actually be able to do that with the no pond being there now?
I turned it off rather than on. Apologies. The application was submitted before the Biodiversity Net Gain became a national part of legislation. But however, the applicant is committed to making sure that the biodiversity in terms of a measured context using the metric which they use, which I think the Department of Energy, Farms, Rural Agriculture is will basically be no net loss.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask regarding the pond that's been mentioned. Obviously, I can't see it on the plans here. I mean, is there such a huge pond that's going to go now?
I mean, the pond is primarily going to be related to the sort of the ecological benefit of the ecology of the site and how that's used. Obviously, as I've said, the scheme has been through numerous site visits from our ecologist, who's, as I said, a chartered ecologist, and it's obviously been agreed with the county's ecologist as well in terms of, you know, what the mitigation is, how that should work. And obviously we've also spoken about potentially looking to see whether that could be increased by a condition or some other sort of method. I think, again, I've given you a politician's answer by not really answering your question, sorry.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to ask a couple of questions, if possible. Firstly, it was in regards to the hedgerow on the southwest side that's due to be removed and then replanted. I was wondering if you could sort of give the reasons to why, you know, this mature hedgerow needs to be removed, really.
Okay, that's again quite specific, but and this is a slight guess on my part, so apologies, but it would be no doubt in relation to deal with the topography of the site in order to get a flat and level site. To deliver that building to the south there, we would probably have to remove it, and that would obviously not remove the hedge, but it would probably damage it beyond sort of reasonable repair. So it obviously agreeing to replant it is probably more sensible than trying to maintain a hedge that might suffer as a result of the excavations that are taking place.
Thank you. One further question I had, again, is in regards to the Biodiversity Net Gain. We're quite an aspirational council. We're quite progressive in wanting to meet the highest possible target possible. What percentage specifically of Biodiversity Net Gain are you looking to achieve with the replanting? I may be putting you on the spot, so you may need a little while to try and find that figure if possible.
I'm going to need a bit of time, and I'm hoping my filing's up to it, to be honest. So in terms of the ecology, apologies, just bear with.
Sorry, could I just ask members of the public to, if you're going to have a conversation, just do it outside so you don't disrupt what's going on in the meeting? That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Right, this is going to take quite a while, so I'm not going to be able to answer you. But what I can say is obviously a combination of the answers I've already given, in the sense that the scheme was submitted prior to Biodiversity Net Gain becoming an adopted sort of national policy, which was 2nd of April, I think.
I think it's a question we should ask the officer, so don't worry about that. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I tried my best. Apologies.
No, it's all right. We will have an opportunity to ask the officer lots of questions. Okay, any more questions for Mr. King? Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. Much obliged.
Okay. Do we have any additional comments following the public contributions, please, Liz?
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, members. We now turn to questions on the report. It's an extensive report, and I hope that you've all read it carefully. And there are lots of conditions which are going to impact on how this development takes place. But if you've got any questions for our officer, now is the time to ask them. Councillor White.
So I am worried about the loss of the pond, the loss of the hedges and the mature trees. And I know you have a condition 7. Could you just explain a bit more what that is going to include, please?
Thank you. Yes. So with the ponds, this was not specifically identified within the ecology, the updated ecology report that accompanied the application. So yeah, with the hedgerow features, the measures that are set out within the recommendations include planting both along the site boundaries, as they're recognised to be most important in terms of connectivity with the wider area. So that's the main focus within the recommendations in the ecology report. So it's an opportunity to introduce more native planting to the site and specific species that are going to achieve the most biodiversity benefits. But alongside that, as you've seen from the ecological enhancement plan, there's also various measures throughout the site alongside the hedgerow planting along the boundaries.
Thank you. Councillor Ashford.
Thanks, Chair. Liz, would you just mind pointing out exactly the approximate place of the pond at the moment? Because it's not clear. If you don't mind.
Chair, if I could just clarify, we've just gone through the Peach Ecology report, which is the tool that we would use and the agent would instruct to deal with this. They haven't not identified a pond. They've identified that there is no pond on site. So I don't know what information has been brought to us through the representation about what this pool of water is, but our ecologist has looked at this report and we haven't identified a pond on the site, and there's a whole range of other things that they've identified in terms of habitat, which has then been fed through into the retention and the ecological enhancements, backed up with conditions as well.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Leaming.
Yes, could you just please clarify the energy requirements for the buildings? Because in some parts of the report we're talking about level 4, and in other parts we're talking about level 5. So I just want to make sure that we know what we're agreeing to.
So, yeah, sorry, with sustainability, the code for sustainable homes is now been superseded. So the wording of the policy is not up to date anymore. So now we, as set out in the report, we set out conditions to require information at both design and building stage to clarify the level of sustainability in the design. So we discharge that as part of our approval process through the conditions.
So you're quite satisfied that we're going to meet level 5 on this?
Well, as I say, the code for sustainable homes is not relevant, it's not a consideration anymore, so it'd be tied up with the current building regulation standards. So the information that the applicant would submit would demonstrate compliance with the current up-to-date building regulations standards for sustainable design.
So that's in a change in our policy. We have to not consider that for planning.
Chair, if I can just clarify, we've had the same requirements for quite a long time for energy, and neatly condition 10 and 11 show what the development is expected to meet.
I'm just trying to make sure that we get the best level that we can.
If you could switch off your microphone now. Thank you, Councillor Leaming. Thank you. Could I ask, we have a lot of bins these days. Where are they all going?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it would be it'd be basically the same as the current arrangement. So it would be from the shared access to the site.
And I have a question about embedded carbon. We don't have a policy about this, although I think it's part of our aspirations for the new local plan, which doesn't yet inform our decision making. But I should have asked this of the developer, unfortunately. Do we know if they're going to keep the construction, the demolition materials on site and use them for foundations and things?
We don't have that specific information at the moment, but within the condition that requests the construction management plan, waste management is part of that consideration. So we could consider that as part of the construction management plan condition.
Perhaps we can do that then. Thank you. That would be helpful. Right. Okay. So I think that's the end of questions on the report. So we move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'm quite disappointed in the response in regards to hitting minimal requirements in regards to parking and biodiversity. I would sort of believe that responsible developers should aspire to meeting the highest possible standards, not just on the parking, but in regards to biodiversity. I completely understand the needs for some removal of trees and hedgerows as explained there, but I am minded to support the application. I think condition 7, if strictly adhered to, would carry this through in regards to the large concerns around biodiversity, but on balance I am minded to support the application.
Thank you. I would like to agree with Councillor Williams, and also, but I would also say that I do think that, given the constraints of this site and the fact that the developer has already had to make quite a lot of changes to their original plans to make it work, I think it's appropriate on this site to remove permitted development rights, certainly for extensions and such like. So I'd like to propose that as part of my contribution to debate. Liz, if you could perhaps come forward with a... Is that possible?
Thank you. Yes, we did discuss this point. So I have drafted a condition which effectively removes the right to carry out development under Class A, which covers extensions, but also roof alterations under Class B. So we can use the standard condition that removes both of those if extensions and dormers.
So I'll propose that at the end of debate. But with that consideration, with that extra condition, I know it's very difficult for local people, and when you look at those pictures of verdant greenery across the garden, it's very difficult to accept that should all go. But unfortunately, this is within the development area of the city, and there is huge pressure on us as a planning authority to accept that large gardens will be built on, and that is effectively imposed on us from national policies, and that is not going to change. It's probably going to get stronger. So I think that the conditions that we are putting on this application and the changes that have been brought forward through the planning process by the developer mean that actually at the end of the day we're going to end up with 3 new houses, much more energy efficient and modern standards, and the impact on the locality, whilst it will be significant, is not so significant as to warrant refusal of this application. So I will be supporting. I believe Councillor Lane, you want to contribute to debate?
Yes, thank you. I agree with a large amount of what's just been said. I'm extremely concerned with the visitor parking on this application because of the narrowness of the road. The biodiversity, I don't think has been met anywhere near at 10% that we asked for again. That's important because that is a rural area as such, although it's in the city boundary, so we have to consider that. I think I would like to have seen a lot more on the energy efficiency of the properties being met in line with what we want to do on our greener policies. So I'm still making up my mind on this one.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think the many serious amendments that have been submitted with this plan are quite significant insofar as they reduce the number of dwellings from 4 to 3. The integral garages are gone. The reducing the number of proposed units from 3 down to 3 has worked well in terms of the design and the layout. The ridge height from 10.5 meters down to just over 8 meters also reduces the dwellings. Hip roofs now proposed also result in less dominant roof lines. And I feel that the conditions applied to conditions 7 and 14 in particular do help to mitigate the biodiversity and ecology side of things as well. So I'm going to support this application.
Thank you. Any further contributions to debate? No. The proposals, we added extra condition to remove permitted development rights as discussed. Is that approved? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So this application is before us for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approving this application, please? So, thank you. So that application is approved. Thank you very much. We're just going to have a slight pause now whilst we change presenting officers. If members who are here. Lovely. Good morning, Marge. And the next item on the agenda will be with us shortly.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, so if I could just introduce, this is item number 7 on our agendas at 13 Quarry Road in Winchester, and our presenting officer is Marge Ballinger. Good morning, Marge.
The proposal site is at 13 Quarry Road, which is inside the conservation area. And the properties back onto St. Giles Hill Park, which is public open space. The dwelling is semi-detached with numbers 13 and 15 as a pair and 9 and 11, and they're built similar, but they do have some differences. The ground slopes up from south to north in the rear gardens and along the rear elevations, obviously. The map demonstrates the pathway and steps of the park that lead up behind the rear gardens of the dwellings. The proposal is to remove an existing small rear extension and side bay window and replace with a single story extension, replace the Velux window and the side, and with a new version and a small roof extension shown here to make room for alterations to the stairwell and to replace and add additional roof lights to the front elevation. The rear extension measures 3.5 meters in height, which will be shown on the elevations, 11 meters in depth, and 3.5 meters from the rear elevation of the building, and 5.5 meters wide. The drawings indicate the potential for peach trees to be planted on part of the boundary. However, the peach trees have not been conditioned. The extension is to lie aligned similar with the number 15 shown right, and maintain a 2-meter gap to the side boundary to the dwelling on the left. The existing ground floor plan is shown here compared to where it sits with the neighboring dwelling to the right and also to the left. And it shows its kitchen and dining room toward the back area of the ground floor. The existing first floor and loft plan indicate the existing windows and Velux windows as well. And on this plan, you can see there's a small, shallow retaining wall to be removed for the proposed extension. And this is where the ground levels as existing on some of the drawings indicate where there's a 30 centimeter difference between the proposal site. Sorry, I can't find my mouse. There we go. The proposal site and the neighbor next door. In this part of the garden, it slopes up toward the north, so it's a little higher at 45 centimeters compared to the neighbor to the left. These are the proposed floor plans. The existing rear access doors to the dwelling will be maintained, and as the original part of the dwelling. The windows and doors are proposed toward the side and rear elevation of the extension shown here. These are the windows and these are the doors. And these are the proposed first floor and loft plan. And the first floor side window will shift and one will be repositioned and one to be removed, sorry. And the loft will have an existing Velux window with the bottom pane as fixed and the top opening only, and a roof light to the front replaced and 2 new additional ones added along the front as well. This is the existing, or this is the proposed front elevation, demonstrating the new roof lights in their place. This demonstrates the existing west elevation toward number 11 neighbors. And there's the bay window that's to be removed, and there's the existing small rear extension. The proposed side elevation is noted here. The extension is 3.5 meters in height. I just wanted to point out that the people in this image are only 4.11 inches in height. So it makes the extension appear very large, but it's only 3.5 meters. 2.5 meters, since it's 3.5 meters, 2.5 meters to come here, and that's potentially above head height, just to demonstrate the high level windows that are in the dwelling as existing and proposed. The brick is to match the existing dwelling, and the windows will be a light gray metal. This is where the existing first floor side window will be repositioned and one will be blocked just to make it better for the first floor room accommodation. The extension for the stairwell will be clad in anthracite and zinc. Here's the existing rear elevation demonstrating the ground level difference to the neighbor, the bay window and the rear extension. And this is a view of the proposed extension. It's to be a similar height and depth as the neighbor shown here on the left. The extension will follow internal ground floor levels of the dwelling. And so although there's a 45 centimeter variance to the ground levels to the neighbor along the right, where the extension is going to be level, the ground levels will be maintained. So there will be potentially more excavation just to keep the ground level at 30 centimeters. The Velux will have its bottom pane as fixed. And again, here's the small dormer window demonstrated. There will be no side windows in the dormer, just only a roof light for the stairwell. And this slide demonstrates a 3D perspective of the proposed extension. Again, the brickwork is expected to match the existing. The side extension does not exceed the original side wall of the dwelling and maintains a 2-meter gap to the neighbor. And these are photos from the proposal site. Photo 1, the larger photo here, demonstrates the existing rear elevation and the side gap. Photo 2 shows the neighbor toward the east and their extension, and that's to be where the proposed extension is to be built. And then image 3 is just a repeat of the previous 3D image, just to give you the perspective drawing compared to the photo. These are additional photos from the proposal site. Photo 4 shows the existing gap between the side elevation and the dwelling to the left. Photo 5 shows another view of the gap demonstrating, and you can see the land level changes in the photos. And photo 6 demonstrates the rear of the garden. And there's a better photo that I will show later, but there is a retaining wall and no access to the park, but just trees and planting. And these are photos taken from inside the proposed dwelling, the proposal site's dwelling. Photo 7 is from the first floor looking out toward the back side. And photo 8 is from the bay window looking onto the neighbor's bay window. There's a slight staggering of the windows. Again, I just want to point out that the windows are very high level, so the potential for a person standing here, it would not be all the way to the top of the window for obvious reasons. It measures about, the eaves of this window measures about 2.5 meters from ground level, I estimated. And these are photos from the neighboring dwelling located west of the proposal site. Photo 9 is just inside the French doors at ground level back toward where the return is extension is to be built, and it will be shown in this area. Photo 10 is just inside the bay window looking back toward the proposal site. And photo 11 was taken from the first floor rear facing window. These are additional photos of the neighbor site. And photo 12 shows the French doors in the background where I was just showed the previous photo. And you can see the side return is utilized. Photo 13 is another view up toward photo 13 is down here. And this is a view up toward the side and rear facing windows. And photo 14 is just another view of the side garden, just demonstrating its use. These are additional photos taken from the neighbor at number 11. Photo 15 was taken further up into the stepped areas of the garden with views back toward the proposal site. Photo 16 was taken from further back up into the terraced area with a wider view of the proposal site compared to the neighboring dwelling. And photo 17 is just a view of the garden at number 11, demonstrating the terracing, and there's additional seating areas to the back. Not shown in the photo, but back up in the areas of the garden. And these are additional photos taken to compare to some of the drawings. This is where the garden starts to slope, photo 18 down here. Try to get my mouse. So this perspective, you can see that the extension will be built, replacing the bay window, and not come all the way out. The extension will stop at where the bay windows are on the rear facing elevation. The Velux window is a slight increase to the existing. And photo 19 demonstrates to where the ground levels are starting to change, but demonstrates the side windows in its position. The section's windows will be approximately in this area here where the chimney is, and the rest of the extension will be just on the other side of that window. Again, the eaves height of this bay window is 2.5 meters, just to demonstrate the above average head height of the windows. And these photos were taken to assess the views from the proposal site from St. Giles Park. This is the rear garden. Number 20 is the rear garden of the proposal site, looking back toward the park. 21 is a wider view, taking back, demonstrating the stairs that go along the back elevations of the dwellings. 22 is just an idea of where we're walking up into St. Giles Park. And then 23 just demonstrates the boundary and the stairs. And while there will be glimpses of the elevation of the dwellings and the proposed alterations, they may be visible during different times of year where the leaves are less scarce, and other perspectives when you get between bushes and hedges. So it's just only glimpses. So we assess the impacts on the wider views of the public open space. And this is the existing front elevation shown with the Velux windows in place as existing and proposed. There is a gap between the two dwellings. So again, while glimpses may be viewed of the extension from public views, we assess the wider impact on the conservation area. So although glimpses would be visible, it's not expected to have any effect on the conservation area. So the recommendation for this application is to permit the proposed alterations. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. We now turn to public speaking, and our first speaker is the objector, Alison Rayner. Good morning, Mrs. Rayner. You will have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't need
from
three.
when you start speaking, so no rush. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Would it be possible, Marge, to put back up the page 98, the photographs of page 98? So if you go back, I can show you. Hang on, it's the one that shows the back of my house. A photograph of the back of my house and the bifold doors. Keep going. I'll tell you when. Keep going, and I thought it was on page 98 of the paginated bundle. Keep flicking through, and we'll get there. That's it. Can you leave it on that one? Thank you. So I won't rabbit on about the things I've submitted, because I've submitted a couple of papers already, and I think I've done my best at explaining it. So all I wanted to say was so I'm not going to say what they are again, because I know you've all read them. If you look at photograph 16, it shows the bifold doors at the back of my house, and the extension, and if you see the roof at the bottom of the bifold doors, the extension is going to be 1 metre higher than that above them, and then it's going to be 3 metres further into the garden, and then it's going to go down the whole of the side return and fill it more or less in. It's not right up against the wall at the back, it's basically opposite the French windows at the back. So it is the volume of it from the side, because of it's 1 metre higher and it's 3 metres out, and then my house is 45 centimetres lower, is really imposing. I'm 5'4", I'm 162 centimetres high. So with the land level difference, it's 2.5 times as tall as me. When you look at the fence is about 2 metres tall, and with the land difference, there's going to be 2 metres of it visible all the way along, 11 metres all the way along. So that's what the problem is. And also you can, on the number 15 photograph, just to give an idea, where the bay window is at the back of number 13, the roof is going to go flat at more or less the top of the roof of that window, not the window itself. It's going to be that much higher up. So you see where the little window is in the corner. So that's why I think it's a problem, I think there are other ways of doing it that wouldn't have all of the effects on my house as what's currently set out, such as I've lived in these kinds of houses for 30 years. Often they have the steps go down into the kitchen in order to sink it, so that you don't cause all of the light deprivation, artificial light pollution, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you very much.
The other thing I wanted to say was I wanted to thank Marge for the way that she's done this, because I think she's come around twice. She's been massively thorough. The photographs to show it all, I haven't added anything else in. So this is she's done her job to the best of her ability, and I'm not remotely criticising her. I'm just slightly mystified that if the things I've said are believed, maybe you can tell me in the course of the discussion, is that even if they're true, is it still possible to change my house sort of within the policy? That's what I don't understand. I can't understand if it's you don't believe me, or if it's you believe me but it won't make any difference.
It's always with planning, it's always a case of balance, I'm afraid, and balancing, the different impacts and whether the impact is sufficiently bad. So you have to cause sufficient harm, and we have to address that and try and make that work out how that balance goes. So that's what we'll be doing this morning. But thank you very much for coming along this morning. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mrs. Rayner? No? Okay, many thanks. You may return to your seat. Thank you. And the other public speaker is the supporter, Sally Bruin. Good morning, Mrs. Bruin. And you again have 3 minutes from when you start speaking, so no rush. Thank you.
My name is Sally Bruin and I own 13 Quarry Road along with my husband William Bruin, who is unable to be here today due to work commitments. I'd like to start by thanking the committee for their consideration of our application. In the next 2 minutes or so, I hope I can shed some light on the rationale behind our proposed design. Will and I moved to Winchester and into 13 Quarry Road in September last year. Prior to that, number 13 had been a much-loved family home for around 30 years, and upon viewing it, we immediately fell in love with its period features, garden and location. However, as the property has been largely untouched for the last 30 years, we knew that it would need updating to create a family home suitable for many years to come. A survey of the property also highlighted a range of structural issues which need addressing. The aim of our plans, as I hope the committee can see, is to update number 13 so it is fit for the 21st century while respecting its Edwardian heritage and retaining its original features. We have worked closely with respected local architect Anthony Munden to create a considered design using high quality materials, which we believe will significantly enhance the property and make a positive contribution to the conservation area. During the consultation process, we have taken on board the recommendations of the planning officer, adjusting our plans for the Velux window in the loft and adding planting along the fence line. We do not believe that the objections which have been raised are justified, nor do they reflect the thought and consideration for our neighbours which has gone into our plans. I believe all the objections are covered by the officer's report, however, feel the need to clarify a few points in light of the documents submitted by Ms Rayner on the 15th of July. Number one, we do have an existing side door on the ground floor. They are French windows which open up onto the patio. Number two, the ground levels which are being challenged have been calculated first by our architect using a digital survey and then by the planning officer using a tape measure. Number three, our plans to remove the bay window on the ground floor, which has actually already had its original features stripped out, was intended to improve the privacy of number 11. We have only added side windows where they will look onto a brick wall. Number four, we're somewhat surprised by the objections to the planting along the fence, as number 11 initially welcomed our suggestion in a handwritten note, which I've got here, describing it as a very elegant solution to the light pollution. Number five, that when number 11 sought planning permission for dormers last year, one of the reasons cited in her application was to offer improved views, and no mention of the privacy of number 13 was made. However, the officer's report noted that the dormer to the rear was likely to provide some limited views into the garden of the neighbouring property. I would also like to highlight the unsolicited support for the application which we have received from other neighbours, including our adjoining neighbours at number 15, who will perhaps be most significantly affected by the proposed building work. Our plans have also been described by the City of Winchester Trust as impressive and sensitive to the original property. I hope the committee can see that these are reasonable plans which will not have the harmful impact on our neighbour at number 11 that has been suggested. While opinions on architectural design, like most things, can vary, we believe this is a design which will stand the test of time. Thank you.
Thank you, and well done for sticking to your 3 minutes. Thank you. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for the applicant? I think that was very clear. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you. Kelsey, can you just switch off that microphone for me? Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you. Right. Let's return to Marge. Do you have any comments following the public speaking, please, Marge?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that although there are existing land level changes that go from 30 centimeters up to 45 centimeters, it just follows the slope of the land. The extension will not be staggered. It will be following the ground levels all the way through. And so the proposed height is to be 3.5 meters plus 30 centimeters, just to give the perspective.
Okay, thank you. Members, I will take questions on the entire report, please. Councillor White.
So I was just going to ask about the glazing on the side of the extension. I think the neighbour said that the fence was 2 meters high, so I just wondered how high the glazing is and what the light spill effect might be.
So we don't have the exact measurement of the height of the windows. I can guesstimate, since this person is 1.5 meters and this is 3.5 meters, I can guesstimate to be about 2 meters in height. And as far as light spill calculations, that was not obtained because there has been existing side-facing bay windows, and the use of the property is as a residential dwelling, so the use isn't changing. So it didn't seem necessary for me to suggest additional light spill surveys to be taken with this proposal.
Any further questions of for our officer? No? So we move to debate. Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, a note on the report itself is very impressive and covers a lot of concerns in regards to overlooking, so I'm quite satisfied in regards to that. I think the footprint mirrors number 15 very well. I'm also supportive of the City of Winchester Trust comments, saying it's quite a sensitive development. The only concern I did have in regards to overlooking, but I think that's been addressed fully as the application has gone along. I think that the only overlooking concerns would be sort of standing on bits of equipment in the room to meet the very top parts of the windows. But again, that has been addressed, so I'm minded to support the application before us.
Councillor White?
I think it's important to be able to modernise a historic dwelling for modern living, and I think this design does that well, using a colour palette that blends in well with the original building, so I'm minded to support.
Thank you. Yes, and I also will be supporting the officer recommendation. I have taken into account all your concerns from number 11, Mrs. Rayner, and I do understand that it can be very disturbing when something like this is happening, but I am convinced from looking very carefully at the plans and having driven past the buildings and seen for myself the relationship. I mean, these are semi-detached Victorian villas. They're close together anyway, and there's always been an element of overlooking over the garden, and I don't think that's going to change. In fact, it'll probably be less than previously. So I also will be supporting the officers in this case. As I say, it's always a question of balance, and I think in this case the applicants have got the balance quite right, and I'd like to commend them. So members, we'll turn to the decision then. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approval, please? Thank you very much indeed. So that application is approved. Thank you. We'll now take a 15-minute break. We'll return at 11 o'clock for the next item. Thank you. Okay, members, it's just gone 11, so we'll start again. Thank you. The next item on this morning's planning committee agenda is item number 8, 1 to 3, the Dean in Alresford, and our presenting officer is Megan Osborne. Good morning, Megan, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? I'd like to draw your attention first to the update sheet. There's a number of added conditions on there, and there's an amendment to an existing condition that was on my report as well. And there was an additional comments from our housing officer that came in late, but they are already sort of set out within the report, my comments. Right, start the presentation. The application site is located within the town of Alresford on the eastern side of the Dean. To the south of the site is the conservation area with a number of listed buildings within this conservation area. You can see that by the hatched area here, and the listed buildings are the red buildings here. To the west of the site is the sheltered accommodation called Wayfarer Place. To the north of the site are existing residential dwellings, and to the east across the road is a mix of residential dwellings and commercial sites. It's just an aerial photo of the site. The existing site is here. The existing building comprises of 3 industrial units. The building is 2-storey in height with a flat roof. The building is set back from the road with parking to the front and a small service yard area to the rear. The site of the building is relatively flat and rises up to the rear of the site with a retaining wall on the rear of the boundary. You can see here, as we saw on the site visit yesterday. This is a policy plan showing the area. So the orange area that says NA2 is the area of the Dean. This is a planning policy in our local plan part 2, which requires the Dean to provide, it says about 75 dwellings and with commercial and parking uses. And this is a close-up of the same area in the master plan. So this is the area of the Dean that comprises the master plan. And again, this is the original buildings that were in the area of the Dean. Most of them have now gone and been developed on. I'll take you through that in the next slide. And down to the right-hand corner of the slide here, that's the existing buildings, the 3 units here. And there's a number of access points onto the Dean, as you can see here. This is a plan that was shown in the master plan. So on the right-hand side is our site. So this is shown for, it says residential or commercial, and then the back is the car park that's proposed. To the rear of this is the sheltered accommodation that we saw on the other plan. The area in the middle that's cut out of the master plan area is the existing residential units. And then above that, it's been earmarked for residential. And then above that again, more residential with commercial units with some accesses off and some pathways that lead to the recreation ground to the rear. Just take you through this. So this is the aerial photograph of it currently. So down the right-hand side of the screen is our existing site here. To the rear, you can see the sheltered accommodation, which is the McCarthy and Stone building. This was for 50 units, and it required £221,000 in contribution towards the car park for this site. It says car park or affordable housing in the legal agreement. And to the north of this site that we call Bennett House, this has got planning permission for the demolition of the commercial buildings and 17 dwellings, and the conversion of the old Forge building, which is here, which has actually already been carried out into residential units, and also an office building. There was a contribution as part of a legal agreement made on this application as well for £17,768. And to the north of this is a site that we call Huxley. So it's this area here. So the front of the site, there's residential dwellings, and to the rear there are flats. There is a footpath that actually runs from the side, the back here, and onto the recreation ground beyond. And there is an access road that when the site to the south is developed, this will link the two sites together. This asked for a contribution as well towards the car park of £50,000. And then to the north of this, there is the veterinary site. So this building that's white, got a white roof, is the vets. And to the back of this is 5 dwellings. And this asked a contribution of £47,500. Right, the proposal, so moving on to the proposal site, the proposal is to demolish the existing building and replace with 14 apartments and car park to the rear of the residential units. No, the car park for the residential units to the rear, and then a 40 space car park, public car park to the rear of this. We saw on site the access point into the site and to the car park is currently the same access point into the site at the moment. And you go down, there's an existing electricity substation which will remain. There's a right of access across to these units here that they have to retain. And then goes to the back of the car park. There's the retaining wall to the back, to the rear here. I'll show you some photos as well. There is a pedestrian access that runs through the middle of the site to the residential units. Some of them are accessed off the Dean, and then goes to the public car park as well. So there's an access, a separate access from the vehicular access as well for pedestrians. This is the landscaping plan of the site. This shows some of the ecology features that were in the ecology plan. So there are some bird and bat boxes shown on this. And I have added condition to the update sheet regarding house martin boxes as well, because we saw on site that that was very important. So that will be a requirement of the ecology plan too. This is the ground floor plan of the proposal. So you can see the undercroft parking here, cycle storage, and then the number of flats throughout the building. This is the first floor plan. There is a total of 14 units. 12 of them are 2-bed and 2 of them are 1-bed. And there is a link between the buildings that pedestrians will be able to walk under, which is a bedroom for one of the flats. And this is the roof plan. So this is the proposed rear elevation of the building. You see the link here through the middle of the buildings. It was asked about the height of the buildings. So the height is 8.2 metres to the eaves, the highest part, and 11.7 metres to the ridge. I'll show you the level changes in further plans. This is the southern elevation. So if you're looking from the conservation area towards the site, so the bottom one is what you would see. So, and the top one is without this building to the front in it. So it's taken it away, it's a section through. And so you can see the undercroft parking here. And you can see it lowering down to the street, which retains that 2-storey element that we saw along the street in the Dean. And this is the elevations from, so on the right hand side is the sheltered accommodation, Wayfarer Place, who's in perspective. So this shows the level changes between the sites. And then the retaining wall, and that's where the car park would be there. And then it lowers down to the street. And this is the front elevation of the proposal. So you can see Wayfarer Place at the back there. And the proposed scheme here. And then this shows you to the top of the screen is what was proposed, and to the bottom is what was amended and is now the application. So we asked for a number of changes to the design But we felt that this new amendment related to the street scene a lot better than the proposed before. And take you through some photos of the surrounding area. So top left hand side of the screen is houses opposite, is a residential. Right hand side of the screen is again residential opposite the access. Bottom right hand side is the building just within the conservation area to the side of where the access would be, and the other side, sorry, left hand bottom is the conservation area as well. Top left is the building opposite the access to the Wayfarer Place, and then again it shows, and there's the funeral parlour, I think that's what it's called, to the right hand side of the screen, which is opposite the site as well. Again, conservation area to the right hand side, and then bottom left is the residential dwelling on the other side of Wayfarer Place, the access to Wayfarer Place. Again, residential units, just showing a bit of context of the area. This is the existing building. So top left is the side elevation, so the access to Wayfarer Place. You can see the building, two-storey building that's existing on the site. And again, top right-hand corner is Wayfarer Place on the right-hand side, and then the existing building. See the level changes here between the two. And then bottom right is the existing building from the streets from the Dean. And then bottom left is the building on our left hand side, and straight ahead is Wayfarer Place. Top left hand side is the existing building on the left hand side of the screen, looking down towards the Dean. And then right hand side is the rear service area existing of the building, and then the Wayfarer Place is on the left, and you can see the level changes in the retaining wall here. Just show you these two. So this is a view down the Dean. So there's the existing building here, and then I'll show you the CGIs. So this is the proposal. So as you can see, it drops down to the street level. So it relates well to the residential units around it. And then you can see this view looking down the Dean. This was a particular concern of one of the objectors, relating to the views beyond. And then you can see the proposed scheme now. The objector is now isn't officially withdrawn his objection, but doesn't object to this anymore because of the amendments that have been made to the scheme. The site lies within the built-up area of Alresford, and it's a part of a larger allocated area for housing and other uses. It's the last remaining part of the allocated area to be proposed for development, and would secure the provision of a public car park, which other sites on the Dean have made contributions towards. The proposed development would accord with the key requirements of the development plan. The proposed development would also help to secure a wider benefit for Alresford by achieving additional public car parking, which will help the viability of the town centre. The applicant has worked with officers by amending plans, and it's considered that the resulting scheme can be supported. The proposal is for 14 units in this location and is accepted, and not out of character with the spatial characteristics of the surrounding area. The proposal will be visible from neighbouring properties, but will not have an unacceptable adverse impact on residential amenity. There are no highway objections to the proposal. Overall, the scheme is well designed and will create a distinctive addition to the local area. This application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions in my report and the changes on the update sheet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Megan. We now move to public speaking, and our first public speaker is the Ward Councillor, Councillor Margot Power. You know the routine, Councillor Power? And you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and especially thanks to the committee for visiting the site yesterday. There is no substitute for a site visit. Now, I am supporting these revised plans, despite the loss of amenity, the loss of jobs, the loss of the men's shed, and the loss of the essential infrastructure for house martins represented by the muddy puddles. I note the proposed conditions to provide for house martin cups, please, not boxes, but I would ask that we make that built in, rather so Swift bricks wherever possible, because in my experience that lasts a lot longer than add-on. I don't know of any Swifts in the particular site, but they are nearby on Broad Street, and with modern building construction, the potential sites for them is sadly depleted. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions from councillors, if that would help.
Thank you. Yes, I should have remembered to say that we did have an official site visit to this site yesterday morning, which was incredibly useful. Thank you. Yes, members, do we have any questions or clarification? Councillor White.
So regarding the Swift bricks, I think Hampshire Swifts had recommended the integral Swift bricks, and they also said about the number that there should be for a small block of flats. It said between 4 and 10. What would you say would be roughly the required amount?
I defer to Hampshire Swifts. However, so far as I know, we do not have Swifts in the Dean. We do have bats. You'd have to come rather later in the day to see those. So I note there are bat boxes being asked for. Again, I would like them to be built in. House martins can be in colonies of up to 50, which may be excessive. I know the siting is very important so they don't overheat. But I think advice from Hampshire Swifts, like they do advise on other similar species, and I would defer to them. There are some very, very fetching house martin cups. Adjacent but not overlooking seems to be the design criteria. I defer to those appointed and with better knowledge than I, Chairman.
Fine, thank you. Any other questions of clarification? No, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Power. Thank you. And our second speaker is the supporter, Alistair Harris. Good morning, Mr. Harris. And you will have 3 minutes when you've started speaking. When you are ready. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of the committee, and thanks for allowing me to say a few words this morning in support of the application. I'd firstly like to take a moment to publicly thank your officers for working with us over the past 2 years ahead of its presentation to you today. Your efforts are much appreciated. Metis Homes have successfully delivered developments in Winchester and the surrounding authorities for more than 15 years, and we are always very proud of the quality of the schemes which we deliver. As you've heard, the site is allocated for residential redevelopment along with the delivery of a public car park under policy NA2. All of the surrounding land allocated under this policy has been consented and is almost entirely now built, making this the final piece of the jigsaw in the regeneration of this part of central Alresford. The master plan, which you've seen today, sits alongside policy NA2 and shows the general arrangement before you today, with the new building fronting the Dean and the car park located to the rear. So that was the basis that we engaged with pre-application discussions with your officers back in 2022. And we subsequently held a public consultation exercise in September of that year, which was very well attended by the local community, alongside a separate presentation of the draft plans to key stakeholders, including the Town Council. All of this work helped shape the application proposals which were submitted the following year. And in the months which followed submission, we engaged in further discussions with your officers and their consultees, including a productive session with the design review panel. I also met personally with a number of objectors who had remaining concerns about the development to try to understand if there was anything further which we could do and could be accommodated within our redesigns. And as a result of all this, the application was subject to further amendments earlier this year, which included a further reduction in overall height and massing, the addition of extra design features and detailing to all of the elevations, and the setting back of the building by a further 2 metres from the pavement edge. All of these changes were positively received and have resulted in proposals being presented to you today with the support of all statutory consultees and a firm recommendation for approval. So the application complies with all relevant policies of your local plan, including the specific terms of the allocation policy NA2. It offers the opportunity to deliver the regeneration of this brownfield site with a high quality and sustainable new residential development, alongside the delivery of the new public car park, which has been planned, as you've heard, for a number of years at this location. It's before you with a recommendation for approval, and that's one which I would respectfully urge you to support today with your vote. I'd of course be happy to assist in answering any questions you have, but for now, thank you for your attention.
Just say no, Matthew. Lovely. So do we have any questions or clarification for Mr. Harris, please? Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. On the site visit yesterday, we noticed there's a post box on the main road there. Have you got any ideas whether that's staying or that's being moved?
Yes, thanks for the question. The post box is in the public highway. It's not part of the application site, but it is in a location that wouldn't be directly in front of any of the new windows which are proposed within the building. So I see absolutely no reason why it would have to move location at all.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the apartments that are on offer. Will any of them be affordable or under shared ownership schemes? I know I live in Bishop's Waltham, which shares characteristics with Osford in that if you've grown up there, it's very difficult to be able to afford a house. So will any of the apartments be available under those schemes?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. As you've heard from your officers and as set out within the report, there was a viability assessment submitted in support of the planning application that demonstrated that based on the existing use at the site and its value, and also the abnormal costs associated with regenerating the scheme, such as contamination within the ground, that the scheme could not support affordable housing. And as a result, they're all private market homes which are proposed. I would add that that viability assessment has been independently considered by assessors and they've arrived at the same conclusions.
That's the problem with brownfield sites. Councillor White.
So regarding sustainability of the accommodation, it says in the report that it should meet level 4 for energy and water efficiency, but actually it's claimed that you will exceed these requirements. So can you just clarify how you might achieve that?
Yes, thank you. The sustainability calculations, the SNAP calculations, will be undertaken at the stage the working drawings are prepared. And at that stage, we'll look at all of the measures and based on a variety of approaches, we always look to deliver what we can in a fabric first. So this is the fabric of the building. And then any additions beyond that in terms of solar panels or heat pumps would be all set out and considered at that stage.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the employment, there was at least one company there that's been there for a considerable number of years. Have they been able to relocate somewhere in the area? And have you helped them at all?
Thank you. Yes, I know there was some discussion at the site viewing committee about the existing occupiers. I understand that at least some of them have relocated locally, but I don't have any of that information before me today.
That's probably a question for the officer, Councillor Laming. Thank you. Any other questions or clarification for the applicant? No. Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Right, we now turn back to our officer, Megan. Do you have anything to add following the public contributions before we ask questions?
Unless you want me to clarify Councillor Laming's.
You might as well, yes.
Yeah, well, Andy Hickman's here. He could probably answer the question more because I don't know the details. I don't know if he does, but he's here to be able to respond to any questions regarding that. If you want to invite him up.
Yes, actually, we do have our officer Andy Hickman with us this morning. If you could come forward, please. Let's start with questions on the parking provision, which is an unusual element of this application, which will be taken over by the City Council once it's been built. And any questions about that provision should now be addressed to Mr. Hickman, if that's okay, members. And I have a couple to start us off. At the site visit, Andy, we looked at the area that's going to be, at least the part that isn't underneath the existing building. It is quite dark, sheltered, and not that well overlooked. It's overlooked by the parking for the residents, and it's not at all overlooked at the back because it's sort of the back of the sheltered accommodation behind. So what can you tell me the City Council are planning to do in terms of lighting, possible even CCTV coverage of the area, just to make it safe for people to use, particularly in the winter months?
Yes, in terms of lighting, we will be requiring the car park site to be lit to Hampshire County Council standards. So we try to put all of our lighting into the Hampshire PFI project because we know then that it's of a good standard in terms of lighting and lux levels, and also that it's maintained properly. And through that work, as soon as the light goes out, it's notified to the operator, which is SSE, and they fix it. So we've got some really good experience of that. So I believe that's a condition that lighting has to be agreed with the developer. So we will be requiring it to be done through that way.
Yes, because it'll be difficult to make sure that, well, it'd be important to make sure that there's no undue light spillage towards the residential accommodation, won't it? So.
Absolutely, yeah, and that process will make sure that that's all checked. But the lighting we use nowadays is thrown forward rather than backwards. It's designed very carefully, and all those checks will be made through that process.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
You've just asked my question.
Sorry, it was the obvious one, I'm sorry. Any other questions for Mr. Hickman about the management of the car park? Will it be a free car park, or?
We're not envisaging it will be a free car park, no. It will be part of the car parking on offer in Alresford. And I'm sure, as you know, we have a number of different car park sites in the town, none of which we fully control because they're leased or under other management. So we have agreements in place. What this will give us is a dedicated public car park that we will have control over completely, and certainty for the future. So the business case that was submitted back in July 23 envisaged it would be charged a similar level to the Perrins car park. So although it's more central, it's still a little bit of a walk. So that's the intention, that we'll charge at that level. And we're thinking that it will be used largely by all-day parkers and workers in the town, freeing up spaces elsewhere for visitors and shoppers. The idea to keep trade and business local rather than people driving further away, and giving us that control and more capacity when there are events in the town, which there are quite a few. So it gives us that flexibility.
Great. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on the parking, Andy, will there be any CCTV in place, or if I missed that?
We're not envisaging there being CCTV. We don't generally have that in our sort of market town car parks. It's tricky and expensive to get the images back to the control centre in Winnell. So if we did have one, it would probably be a standalone system rather than a monitored one. But I think, you know, we generally don't find there's a need for it in these type of car parks. Certainly not in Alresford generally. But it's something that we can keep under review, and it's something that can fairly easily be added if it becomes an issue. And if we have the funding, obviously, to do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Hickman, for coming along this morning. Right, so we'll take questions on all of the report. We've covered the parking, so anything else to do with the report, please, to Megan. Any questions, members? Can I ask, is it possible to specify in the condition integrated bird and bat boxes, so Swift bricks rather than Swift boxes and so
Yeah,
on.
we can add that. Yes, that's fine.
And okay, and plenty of house martin cups. So I mean, if we can, I don't know, find a recommended level and put that in, just so everybody knows exactly what's expected. Lovely. And the other question we had on site was about letterboxes. Do you know if there are going to be external letterboxes or whether you know that how that's going to be addressed?
I don't know those details, I'm afraid. We've got a condition, can't remember what number it is, regarding the details to be submitted to us. So they would be in that. So what are you requesting? Is it?
Just to clarify, we do normally want details of windows and doors, but we don't look at them in terms of the minutiae detail of where the letterboxes are. Wouldn't normally get involved in that because we're looking at amenity issues rather than anything else. So I wouldn't want to set a precedent by trying to specify that we're going to start looking at that level of detail.
Perhaps we should, because actually it's very important that, you know, we want these new residents to feel part of the community, and if it's easy for people to deliver local newsletters and so on to them, then I think that's a very important part of living in a community. So I think that if we could request just information about what's planned in terms of how people are going to be accessed through, you know, through their post and so on, that would be helpful. We can't condition it, but if we could just, you know, influence perhaps what's done.
When the detail comes in, we can have a look at that, but we couldn't make any firm commitment to be able to negotiate what you want.
No, I think if the developer knows we're looking at that area,
That's noted. Yeah.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
look at that.
Thank you. That would be helpful. Right. Any more questions, members? Otherwise, we move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I firstly welcome the cooperation with the developer, officers and objectors to take on board concerns and put forward what in my opinion is a really well designed and accommodating building, especially taking regard to the views and the street scene. I'm obviously disappointed regarding affordable housing, but completely understand being a brownfield site and the potential with contamination of soil, that this will increase costs and reduce the opportunity to have affordable housing. I do like to mention it, though, to keep it on everybody's minds. I'm quite satisfied regarding the reassurances in regards to the car park, especially in regards to the funding, the lighting, security aspects. Therefore, I'll be supporting what I think is quite a well-designed building.
Thank you. Councillor White.
So I agree with Councillor Williams regarding the affordable housing, because it is important in these market towns to have that available, but I can see that it's not viable in this situation. Overall, I think it's a good use of the site and it's in keeping with the other development that's in the area, and obviously providing the much needed parking. And I'm very pleased about the condition for the integral Swift bricks and the house martin cups.
Thank you. Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the officer on a really good report. It's been presented to us today, and it shows the benefit of the officers working closely with the applicant, which I think has improved this no end, and also listening to the local residents and what they feel as well. So I have no hesitation in going along with this at all.
Thank you. If there's no more contributions to debate, we move to the decision. So this application is before us, recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approving this application? Thank you very much, Matthew. That's approved. Thank you. With the slight amendments and things to conditions, yes. The integration of the bird boxes, yes, yes. Lovely. Thank you. I know. We now move to item number 9. We just have a slight pause whilst we bring in the new officer presenting. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to item number 9 on our agendas now. It's Drake's Bottom, Dirty Lane, Hambledon. And our presenting officer is Cameron Taylor. Good morning, Cameron. And when you're ready, we'll have your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This presentation is for the construction of 2 tourist accommodation units with the associated access, drive and parking area to the east of Drake's Bottom on Uplands Road and Dirty Lane. Here at the location plan, where the site is marked by the red, they say it is located to the south of Uplands Road, with the residential property of Drake's Bottom located to the west of the site. And I'll just note that School Lane on the right-hand side of the plan is what leads to Anthill Common. Here an aerial photograph, the site marked by the yellow triangle, which is proposed to utilise an existing access. Again, the residential property of Drake Bottom can be seen to the left-hand side of that triangle itself. Followed by a wider out aerial photograph. So the postcode which the area is situated is the red outline with, as I say, the yellow triangle marking this proposed site. I'll just note that it's about 500 metres from the site to Anthill Common and then about 2 kilometres to Denmead itself. Next we have the site plan, the existing being the left and the proposed being the right hand side. And I'll just note a key element of this proposal, which is a good reference point, is this oak tree situated here on the right hand side of the proposed plan. And next I'll just run through the 2 previously refused site plans, because this was separated into 2 applications which both were for 2 dwellings. This is 22/00640, and this was using the two right-hand paddocks to create 2 dwellings utilising the existing access. And this is the following refusal, which utilised the left-hand 2. So I've combined the 2 refused site plans together to give the idea of the context of the refused site, and I've put the proposed site plan on the right hand side. And I'll just note again the tree, which is for reference on the right hand side of the proposed site plan, is this one here to the front of that 3rd dwelling. And then to give further context, I've now put an overlay of the proposed site plan over the refused combined site plan, with that of the proposed tourist accommodation units being outlined in red, along with the parking and access area as well. Next, I get to the north elevation, which is the front elevation of the cabins proposed, which it will have a ridge height of 2.9 metres and the overall width of 12.9. With this set of elevations being for the 2 dwellings in the right-hand side of the refused paddock in the application, which was using the right-hand side of the paddock, which had a ridge height of 5.1. The width was 17.9 and the depth being 12.7 metres. It also included the erection of 2 detached garages to the dwellings were refused, which the garages themselves are 4.8 metres in height and 7 metres in depth and 7 metres in width. Next, we have the ones for the refused application, which utilised the left-hand paddock, which the dwellings had a ridge height of 6.1 metres, followed by the width from the front being 15.65 and the overall depth being another 15.5 metres. The garage for these refused dwellings themselves were at a height of 5.2 metres, with the width and depth as well, both being 7 metres. Here we have a photo which is looking into the site from Dirty Lane through the access proposed to be used, followed by a photo when you're in the access looking to the west, with that dwelling being at Drake's Bottom. And here we have a photo which is looking to the east from the access as well. Here the south elevation, which is the rear, followed by the side elevations, which the cabin themselves have a depth of about 17.5 metres, including the porch, and 5.95 metres around that, excluding the porch. Here at the other side elevation. Here are the proposed floor plans of the cabins. They are shown to be 1 room here, a 2nd room, another room here, and then this appears to all be open with a canopy on the left-hand side. Then here we have the refused floor plans for the right-hand paddock dwellings. and followed by the refused floor plans for the dwellings in the left-hand paddock. And this is that tree in question, which I noted on the site plan as a reference point, which I've included the site plan on the right-hand side of the slide just for reference, with one of the cabins being situated just behind that, with this photo looking slightly to the east from the access. Followed by a photo which is now from within the central area, looking towards the south between the two cabins. Followed by a photo now from similar spot of the access looking to the west, with, I can just note that that is sort of the property, the residential property of Drake's Bottom. I'm sorry, this is just a duplicated slide, the previous. Now I've just included a location plan with the blue line showing the public right of way for reference. And this photo is from the public right of way. If I just go back from about here, looking to the west towards the site, where this is that reference tree I've mentioned previously. That concludes my presentation, with the officer's recommendation being to permit the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cameron. We now turn to the public speaking, and we start with the objector, Neil Rusbridger. Good morning, Neil. You will have 3 minutes from when you start speaking, and the microphone is turned on by just pressing the button at the base of the unit. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members. I'm Neil Rusbridger of the Denmead Village Association. Your policies state that dwellings in the countryside will only be permitted where there is an operational need for such a location, i.e. agriculture, horticulture or forestry. Policy MTRA4 does allow for small-scale sites such as low-key tourist accommodation, but appropriate to the site, location and setting. This application also contravenes the Denmead Neighbourhood Plan. The proposal fails to respond positively to the character of the area, resulting in visual and physical harm. The access to this site is on a single track lane, which will struggle with additional traffic, and the recent closure of the lower Fareham Road highlights this and the danger to other road users, particularly pedestrians. The site is designated and brought as agricultural land and should remain as such. When the applicant originally brought the plot, the neighbours were told they intended to build £2 million houses. Members should consider if this is still their end game, especially as we understand that nothing has been done in terms of land management in the past 8 years. Your officers have stated that to prevent the units being used as permanent residential accommodation, which would be contrary to the development plan policies and the MTRA4, condition 9 is recommended. How will members react if these were to be turned into permanent accommodation? It is known that enforcement is difficult and can be ineffectual. Holiday homes can be an alternative to get around the system to convert to residential. How will the occupancy condition be policed? As an ex-hotelier, I believe that the register is a weak control point. The sewage system will discharge into a ditch that dries up in the summer, which is not permitted by the Environment Agency. The immediate neighbour has reported land heave and erosion of an adjoining ditch and increased water runoff. There is surely an amplified risk of flooding, especially in view of the soil structure and our increasingly volatile climate. There are, we believe, at least 12 let properties within 1 mile of this proposal, and few of these are overutilised. In addition, there have been 2 other holiday let developments within Well's End which have never been used as such and are now being used as permanent dwellings. The strength of opposition from residents is clear, and if this application is approved, it will set a precedent for further applications in the fields around Well's End. Planning history of this site shows previous refusals on the ground of principle, and we believe these remain.
Thank you. I'm afraid that's the end of your 3
Yeah,
minutes.
that's fine.
But members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mr. Rusbridger? I think you were very clear. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We now have the Parish Council representative, Kevin Andrioli. Councillor Andrioli. If you know the routine. Oh, all right. And you have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. There's no rush. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, good morning. Denmead Parish Council raised a strong objection on the following grounds. Winchester City Council Local Plan Policy MTRA 4 has been applied inappropriately by the applicant in this particular site. The need for holiday accommodation is questioned given that the holiday accommodation in nearby Drake's Bottom, a site you have seen on photos and plans this morning, was incorporated into the main dwelling as they couldn't let it as a holiday let. The proposed site is situated on a very narrow lane. Dirty Lane is in places 2.6 metres wide and there's no pavement, no access on foot, so access on foot may be dangerous and encourage tourists to use motor vehicles. Pedestrians and horse riders may be forced into hedgerows as traffic passes. Despite the assertions in the application, the only access to the site is a 5-barred gate. The proposed site will be highly visible from and may affect the setting of a nearby right-of-way. The proposed water treatment plant would drain into a ditch which runs dry in the summer months. The water treatment plant instructions say that it should never be allowed to stop running, so backup power will be required. Ironically, despite the assertion in the officer's report, consultation of the government's long-term flood risk website shows the site is a high risk for surface flooding, and this has been demonstrated several times this year, possibly also on Monday. There is no infrastructure in the site as it is currently a paddock, meaning a large amount of concrete or other hard materials would need to be added for large cabins to accommodate it with associated parking and access, and therefore contrary to WCC's declared climate emergency. Adding 2 cabins in that position will inevitably mean additional artificial light, which will be visible from the residences at Highport School Lane and those closer, with additional noise and features such as washing lines in what is currently a horse paddock. In addition, the site is only 800 metres from the South Downs National Park and its dark sky area. So we would ask you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions of clarification for the Parish Council? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask on the in regards to what current tourism accommodation is available in Denmead, and what I'm sure as a parish you will identify what need for further accommodation is in Denmead. If you could sort of touch on that, that would be quite helpful. Thank you.
There are, to my knowledge, I think it's 2 sets of accommodation in World's End, and as you've already heard, there were 2 others which have now been turned into full-time accommodation. I'm not sure there's any other, to be honest. This committee, I think, has turned down some in the Denmead Gap. We are a fairly large village in southern Hampshire, but other areas would seem to me to be more appropriate for tourist accommodation. Most of it, I would suspect, would be in the national park.
Thank you. And if I could just say that Mr. Rusbridger seemed to think that there were 12 units of holiday accommodation within a mile. Is that something you recognise?
Well, I'll bow to his knowledge because I wasn't aware that there were that many. I do know there are some in World's End. And his question regarding monitoring them, they are well monitored by the World's End Residents Association.
I'm sure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any more questions? No? Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. Thank you. And finally, we have Mr. Paul Benfield and Mrs. Margaret Bentley. If you'd like to come forward, please. And are you going to share the 3 minutes or? Yes, lovely. And you've discussed that between you. Lovely. Right. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Margaret Bentley and this is Paul Benfield. In August 2023, we asked for pre-planning advice from Winchester City Council, and Robert Green, the Principal Planning Officer, visited us at our land. We were very grateful to have the opportunity to meet Mr. Green. Following our meeting, he sent us a letter, reference 23-01963 PRE. The letter provided examples of successful applications for tourist units in our local area, which we used as reference points. He wrote, "I have provided advice that small-scale units would be appropriate for this site." Our first step was to send him 2 options of cabin design. Mr. Green's email, dated the 12th of September, advised his preference for a log cabin called Donna, and the Donna design has been used for both cabins in our application. Our next step was to mark out the size, shape, and possible locations of the cabins using posts and tape. Mr. Green visited our land to see where we had positioned the taped areas, and his email dated the 19th of September suggested the location for both cabins should be amended. We moved the posts and tape to his suggested location. Mr. Green visited our land again, and his email dated the 12th of October said the revised position for both cabins was now balanced against the need to protect the tree and also the visibility from the roadway. We were very grateful to Winchester City Council for such positive pre-application advice. As a result of the advice and the site visits by Mr. Green, we went ahead and applied for planning permission, and we request that our application is approved as we followed the advice provided by the Principal Planning Officer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Benfield, do you want to say anything or are you there to answer questions? Yes, I think you've got 30 seconds or so left. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say that things that have been said in here today with objectors is not true. I've owned the land for over 8 years, and we do look after the land. I have spent good money on the land. I have it cut every year, and also the drainage. It's an automatic system. I think it drops out 1 litre every week, 1 litre of water. So what they say, they need to get the facts right, is not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this is your opportunity to set the facts straight. So, members, do we have any questions of clarification for the applicants? Could I ask, do you have a business plan for this enterprise? How did you ascertain if there was going to be the demand? I mean, we've heard that existing holiday homes are being absorbed into houses or turned into full-time accommodation because they can't be let as holiday homes. So how have you decided this is going to be a good enterprise?
We've looked at the area, and we've been and spoken to the other people who have holiday homes, and there is quite a few of them. We've spoke to them personally, and they've all got bookings. They're doing really well. So we decided that we would look at it ourselves and go this way. And we've also spoke to an agent, and they're more than willing to take us on. They say they need more of this for people to come down. And we're happy to do it. We're happy to spend the money and get people in to the area, and it needs people in the area. We've got the big house alongside our land. They use the road every day. Their cars, their vans, there's deliveries, there's dustbin men who go up and down the road. There's not a problem with the road whatsoever. It's fine. But we've done our homework, and we know it's going to be a good venture for us.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Benfield, when you say you did your homework with regard to the other providers of accommodation in the area, can you tell me where in the main the clientele come from?
Well, the owners of the property.
No, the people who stay in their properties.
Well, there'd be the visitors coming into the area.
I mean, are they UK or non-UK based?
Oh, they would be most probably UK based, coming down from up and down the country.
Thank you very much.
But if we can get overseas visitors, even better. I mean, that's fine. They would book the residences, the places the same as anyone else. I certainly wouldn't discriminate from anyone, from any country.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions of clarification? Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I had firstly a question in regards to any, obviously you are in the countryside, any sort of cycle storage to discourage vehicle traffic in the side?
That's a very good question. Yes, there will be places to store bicycles and charging of electric bikes, which are very common now. So that will be accounted for. People want that now.
Yeah, I think it's actually an additional condition that's in our update sheet. So, yes. Okay, Councillor Williams.
And then just one more. It was just an extension, really, of the chair's comments in regards to the business plan. Have you looked at sort of what websites you're looking to advertise on? If you could sort of go into further detail in regard to that.
Yes, we have looked at that. There's a local agent, and he has already got some of the other holiday homes on his books, and he's more than willing to take us on. He's made it clear that he's got people who want to rent for the holiday home.
Thank you very much. You may return to your seats now. Thank you very much. I think, Dawn Hutchings, you have something to add about the need for accommodation.
It's just to put it in context, Chair, because need in itself, in this case, is not a material planning consideration. Quite a lot of members' questions were about the demand and the location and where do your customers come from and will it be viable and have you got a business plan, that sort of thing, which is all fair and well. But I just wanted to put it into the context in the National Planning Policy Framework. A small section on supporting a prosperous rural economy, very much it is envisaged that sustainable rural tourism, which respects the character of the countryside, is acceptable. And that's really the framework for your decision making today, alongside the local plan part 1 in MTO RA4, which carries that through and identifies the countryside as being an acceptable location for low key tourism. So in principle, that there is principal support for this, but of course it's about the location. Is this the right site for it, which you can consider along with its visual impacts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. As in all planning decisions, it's a case of balancing the different considerations before us this morning. Right. Cameron, did you have anything to add following the public contributions?
I've got nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so members will move to questions on the report. Councillor Laming.
Yes, I'm concerned with the sewage, where we're talking about being treated and then going into a ditch. Now, I know that there's been some controversy on going into ditches, let alone ones that dry up in the summer. Have you looked into that? And does that come under it? And I'm also concerned about the biodiversity, where we've got a net gain of 10%.
So with regards to, let's say, drainage and sewage, it was looked into and say it was shown to be in flood zone risk 1, it says, through the assessment, and there is a condition, which is number 5, which is prior to the commencement of any works, sort of details of the proposal for the found surface water shall be submitted to and approved in writing before the works can commence, which will then confirm that in regards to the drainage and sewage side of it.
And are we getting 10% net gain on biodiversity? Are we getting the 10% net gain on the biodiversity?
This application again is too early to have triggered it, but on future sites, small sites like this will trigger it. exemptions. We'll point that out at the start and it'll be fully briefed in the report for you.
I think is there a landscaping plan? There is proposed landscaping, isn't there, with this?
Yes, there's a proposed landscaping plan under condition 4,
Yeah.
as well as some further recommendation, mitigation enhancement from the preliminary ecological appraisal as well under condition 10.
Right, any further questions? Yes, Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Is there anything in the conditions that say that this won't be turned into a permanent home in the future?
There's a very strong condition on the use of it as holiday accommodation, which is condition 9 on page 165. If I don't know whether that can be beefed up at all, but anyway, it's our normal holiday accommodation condition. Councillor White.
Well, it was a similar question to Councillor Ashwell, whether that can be made stronger, that condition 9, because just to keep a register that may be checked, I don't think is possibly enough to ensure that it won't become a permanent residence later on.
Chair, we can change the wording, but in terms of what you're looking for in terms of making it stronger, as it currently stands, it's a long-standing condition which we have used many times, and we do find it effective to enforce because it means we can make contact with the owner, expect to see that register, and visit the site and look for signs of how it's being used and occupied, and then ultimately serve breach condition notice if we find that it isn't acceptable. Other than that, I think we're changing the scope of it, and if you wanted to make it stronger, as in title on tourism accommodation, making it seasonal, things like that, that's ultimately changing the use of this site. So I would suggest that the mechanisms do enable us to enforce as it currently stands.
Am I right in thinking that if in the future it wanted to become a full-time accommodation, although they're very minimal sized cabins, aren't they? That would require a whole new planning application.
The use in itself is the same because it is residential. It's the condition itself that restricts it being used for anything other than tourism. So yes, they would have to apply to remove that condition or just a new planning consent for a new dwelling in the countryside, which, as you've seen before, we have rejected. This committee has rejected that before, whether they be self-build or for independent living otherwise.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself agreeing with Mr. Rossbridger. I don't believe that a register of just names of the occupiers will actually agree to.
Councillor Cunningham, is this a question or debate?
It's a question.
Okay.
The question I have is this. I don't believe that just the names of the occupiers of the units and their arrival and departure dates will be sufficient to ensure the delivery of the condition. I think we should actually add the names of the occupiers' names and permanent address of the occupiers so that we know that there's no John Smith, Fred Bloggs, Tom Jones, etc., etc., etc. I think we need to make sure that we iron this down.
I think, Chair, it's probably a question for me rather than the planners. So when we look to enforce a condition, it assumes that the condition is reasonable, enforceable and proportionate in all regards. So if you're adding, for example, the address of those accommodating the actual units, how does that materially weigh into the decision whether or not there's a breach of that condition or not? Irrespective of where that person has come from, there will ultimately be a breach if that person was actually residing there. The address of the people occupying and where they've come from for tourism purposes is, excuse me, by the by. So I don't think in knowing the address of those tourists coming to that actual accommodation would actually do anything further than what is actually the point of the condition in the first place. You have to weigh that against the fact as well that if there was, for example, any breach, the people actually living there would one have to register for council tax purposes.
So if it became a property in breach, they would have to actually register for council tax. So it's covered by other regulatory regimes. In taking into account the points about whether or not it's strong enough, yes, arguably it is strong enough. The evidence will be there. We can ask for those registers whenever we want to. The point about seasonality is a question. This is tourist accommodation. We can bring it in and put seasonality on it, for example, for specific periods of the year. That arguably would make it stronger, and it's perhaps a matter for the committee. However, the scheme is as before you. The application is for 365 over the year. That would ultimately change the scheme, and it would give the applicant a right to appeal. So do bear that in mind. Obviously, if you're bringing seasonality into the equation, that is not the scheme before you. You'll be changing the scheme, and it would open up a condition appeal to the applicant in this case. To answer your point, though, I think knowing the addresses of where the people are coming from, the tourists, don't really do much in actually providing further teeth for the enforcement team.
My concern basically was the fact that after 4 weeks, you could have somebody leaving the place as John Smith and coming back as Tom Jones. Do you get what I'm getting?
Councillor, that could always be the case. So we're filling out these registers. I think you have to take it at face value that these applications, they're coming to us truthfully. We can't work from the assumption that every single applicant has some misfeasance or malfeasance in mind. And ultimately, that would probably be a fraud, fraud by false representation. So in completing these registers, they do have to be accurate. And we start from that presumption that what they tell us is on face value, that it's accurate, correct, and is the truth. To do so otherwise, I think the whole planning regime would probably fall down and we would never get anywhere.
Not just the planning regime, I think the whole country would fall apart. Yes, so what we're debating, what we're going to decide here is whether or not this is the correct position for this tourist accommodation, and our officers are recommending that it is, and we need to discuss that and make up our minds. And that this is the standard condition that we put on all tourist accommodation. It's worked so far, there's no reason to consider that it won't work in the future, with goodwill and honesty on all sides. So if there are no more questions on the report, Matthew, can we just close the door? I'm sorry, that whatever that noise is, it's disrupting. Okay, so we now turn to debate, members. So any members wishing to debate? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm finding this decision quite difficult, as has been sort of teased out through the questions. I find in regards to condition 9, as Councillor White has mentioned as well, it seems quite a passive condition, and I was wondering whether it could be more active in putting the responsibility on the applicant to regularly provide the details of those, rather than sort of being at the request of the council. This may force a more sort of responsible applicant to be providing that information on a regular basis, almost as a reminder that this is tourist accommodation and not residential. I'm also finding it hard on balance, following the comments of the parish council and the objectors' comments in regards to this being a location where there is a specific need for tourism accommodation. However, it is also in the countryside, where tourism, is greatly needed and the countryside is enjoyed. I'm finding that the sufficient local amenities, I mean, there is a pub nearby, having sort of visited via Google Street Maps and had a good look around. However, that seems to be the only facility nearby to sort of sway me to support the application. So I think I will be listening further to debate before making my final decision.
Thank Thank you. Before you come in, Councillor, let me, if I could put in my contribution. This is quite a difficult application. There is history on this site, but that we should completely ignore, because this is a separate application and we should view this on its own merits. However, viewing this on its own merits, I understand that there is some conflict about the need for more tourist accommodation in this particular area. We've heard from the local contributors that the road is narrow and dangerous at times, and there's no footpath, and we're trying to provide sustainable tourist accommodation in appropriate areas, and I'm finding it difficult to believe that this is the most appropriate area to put sustainable tourist accommodation. I agree that the impact on the rural character of the area, of the significant amount of hard standing and foundations that will be required for these two new tourist units, will be a huge impact on the area. And I think that it will have some significant impact on the rural open views that currently exist across that field. So we're not talking about converting an existing, even a small stable block in the corner of the field or something. You know, these are two new cottages, effectively cabins, plonked in the middle of a field, just because that happens to be the existing access. I am concerned about the drainage issues. I'm concerned about potential flooding issues. And I am not convinced that the benefit of the tourist accommodation outweighs the impact on the countryside. And so I think I'm leaning towards going against the officer recommendation, but I will look forward to hearing other members' views. Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. You reflect exactly what I've been thinking about. I do think that on reflection, it's a very difficult decision. However, the officers provided us with a very good report, but there are a large number of points which I cannot agree with. And I think that it's not the suitable place for holiday accommodation, amongst many other conclusions. Therefore, I think I will be voting against this one.
Thank you, Councillor Laming. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. As it happens, I drove down this road to have a look at the site, and as described, it is a very, very narrow single track lane, to the extent that I was worried about another car coming and where would I divert. So that's one of the big concerns, and the fact that there's absolutely nothing there in terms of infrastructure or anything, so that it would be a big disruption to the countryside to build these.
Any more? Okay, members, so we need to make the decision now. So this recommendation from the officer is that this application should be approved. Can I see those in favour of approving this application? Those against? Any, no? Okay, so that's everybody against. So we've turned down the recommendation of the officer. Now we need to come up with some planning reasons for refusal. If I may turn to our officers for some help here.
Not a problem, Chair. I think there's two clear areas that you've got concerns about in respect of the NPPF for sustainably located rural tourism and MTRA4 that would expect the same in terms of low-key tourist accommodation. So my recommendation would be that we are looking to refuse based on it being contrary to the NPPF. DS1, which is our wider residential spatial strategy, and also MTRA4, as it's not well linked or connected to the settlements or facilities, with a I suppose a poorly made track. So therefore, it's contrary to that the credentials of sustainable tourism location, and also that it doesn't then overcome some of the concerns that we had before in respect of DM23, which is your concerns with an open field and the visual amenities of it there. So I would suggest that that's what you would be refusing it for as well, along the lines of the previous refusal reason, which looked at policies DM 15 and 16 and DM 23. It fails to respond positively to the character of the area by virtue of its siting and its layout, its position, its appearance. So there's those two reasons there, one in principle and one in terms of visual impact.
Thank you. I think that covers it. So on the basis of those reasons for refusal, this application is now recommended for refusal. Can I see all those in favour of refusing this application? Any against? No. So that's all members. Thank you very much. So that application is refused. And I think we just have time for the last one before lunch, which is item number 10, Meadows End in Heathcote Place in Hursley. It's Cameron Taylor again, so we don't need to swap over our case officers. We'll just have a slight pause whilst members of the public come in and go out. Just before we start item number 10, in terms of what's the word? Hang on. In terms of disclosures of interest, I should mention that the principal objector to this next application is a former member of the City Council and well known to most of us around this table, I think. But I would like to confirm that I haven't discussed it at all with former Councillor Bell or her husband or in any way. And I think Councillor Ling, you have a declaration as well.
Yeah, I have a declaration that I'm the ward councillor for Alders Battery and Badger Farm, and Hursley comes into that area.
You also have not predetermined this in any way.
No, I only knew about this when I read the papers.
Okay, so I think that's made that sufficiently clear, Daniel? Yes, good, thank you. All right, so the next item, number 10 on our agenda is Meadows End, 7 Heathcote Place in Hursley, and our presenting officer is Cameron Taylor again. Over to you, Cameron.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this presentation is for the extensions of the garage block and lost development to form ancillary office and habitable space to Meadows End, which is 7 Heathcote Place. Here's the location plan. The site is bounded by the red outline, which is, I'll highlight Heathcote Place itself is this road here and ends at the dotted line. And the property itself is then served by private access, which serves, I believe, number 5 through to number 8, Heathcote Place. Next, we have an aerial photograph, the site marked by the yellow triangle. Again, Heathcote Place coming in as it comes up Port Lane. And I'll just put the mouse cursor over where the garage is situated, which is in this little corner here. And then I'll put just a wider aerial photograph to give further context to the site of Hursley itself, the residential nature. Followed by the site plan, the left-hand plan being the existing, the right-hand being the proposed, where we can see the extension as shown to that proposed garage itself, with Heathcote Place ending this within private access again to number 5 through number 8. And here we have a photograph which is looking to the northeast from the access of from Heathcote Place itself, which I've just put on the site plan here to sort of give a representation of where the photograph is taken from. This garage itself is to number 6, with the garage to number 7 being situated behind this hedge. Followed by another photo which is set further back in Heathcote Place, again looking towards the site, with the site itself being situated behind this garage here. Next is the northeast elevation, the existing and proposed, but say the existing being the left and the proposed being the right hand, followed by the southwest elevations, again the existing left and proposed being the right, with the dormer being what would be fronting into the private access. Here we have a photograph from within the private access looking towards number 7 itself. This is the garage in question, which will extend along this wall, followed by another photo which is just set further, slightly further back, in which we can see number 8 on the right hand side, again number 7, and the garage is the centre of the photo. And we've got another photo which is now looking more directly towards number 8 from the access, and as again, this is the garage in question on the left hand side of the photo. Here we have the, sorry, this is labelled incorrect, it's not the northeast elevation, this is the northwest elevation, which is the side which is as you enter the driveway to number 7, this is what's there. And say followed by another photo again set further back, just from within the private access off Heathcote Place, say with the garage itself here and looking towards the northwest elevation. And then again, this one unfortunately was titled incorrectly, as this is, I believe, southwest elevation, which is that towards number 8 itself. And here with the existing and proposed ground floor plans. Well to note, this is the access within to the site as number 7. The dwelling number 7 is here, and you would have dwelling number 8 just up here to the left, into the top left of that plan. Then we've got the proposed first floor plans showing the office space. There was a previous approval, which is just for the ground floor extension of the garage itself. And so these are the elevations and floor plans. And to conclude concludes my presentation with the officer's recommendation being to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. We now move to public speaking, and the first contributor is David Jousey. Good morning, David. Well, it's good afternoon, actually, isn't it? And I believe you have a PowerPoint as well. Is that ready to? Yes, lovely. Thank you. And you will have three minutes. Thank you very much.
I'm resident of number 8 Heathcote Place, and I'm speaking on behalf of 6, 8 and 9 Heathcote Place. We have no objection to the extension of the garage, which the applicant already has permission for. Our objection is entirely around the loft extension and the poorly designed full-length, full-height dormer on the front-facing roof of the extended garage, which overhangs my land. You can see the visualisation there. Heathcote Place consists of detached garages in front of the houses with their garage doors facing towards the respective houses. This means that what has been described as the rear of the garage within the officer's report is actually the front-facing facade and roof. The end of Heathcote Place is a shared driveway serving 5 properties. It is not a adopted highway, but I question the definition this is private. Anyone can access it, and it is the public access for all the properties. In addition, contrary to the planning officer's report, you can see the garage from the public highway. Either way, just because the space in front of the garage is not public highway, that does not mean there can be carte blanche to build whatever you want. The front-facing dormer is a poorly designed addition to the garage and streetscape. It is bulky and out of proportion with the existing roofline. It is overbearing and harmful to the character of the street. It has out-of-keeping, non-standard windows on the front elevation. This is not a subtle extension. The proposals are not high quality and are contrary to policies CP13 in terms of negative impact on the local environment, DM16 in terms of responding positively to the local environment, and DM17 as the proposed front-facing dormer is overbearing. If you can move on to the next slide, please, that'd be helpful. The High Quality Places SPD is clear on the use of dormers in extensions. It states dormers should not dominate a roof, and very large dormers are unlikely to be acceptable. The bad example of a dormer within the SPD on page 90, up above there on the right, looks very similar to this proposal. The High Quality Places SPD also references garages and states they should not be excessively large or over-prominent, and gives an example that garages should not be in front of properties. While the position of the current garage cannot be changed, any alterations to the garage should recognise the SPD and not double down by creating an even larger garage through the full-length, full-height dormer. Quite simply, this type of dormer would not be acceptable on the front elevation of a house. So in this case, you have a garage in front of a house. It stands to reason it should not be acceptable at this property. Finally, every property at the end of Heathcote Place is objected due to significant direct impact, as has the Parish Council. I ask the councillors to put weight on the views of the local people and the parish council and take account of the factual errors in the planner's report and recognise the significant impact and therefore reject this application. I think you can only appreciate the impact of this extension by seeing it in person, and the officer's photos are selective, for instance, avoiding the existing view of the garage from the public highway, and the photos don't convey the prominence of the dormer. So the photo on the left is from the public highway where you can see. I recognise the applicant wants to make better use of the garage, and I'm sure there is a design solution to this without the overbearing front dormer.
I'm afraid you've run out of time, but thank you very much. Were there any more pictures you wanted to show us?
No, that was everything.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you've made your point very clearly anyway. Thank you. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for Mr. Jousey? No? Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Mrs. Bell, I don't think you're down to speak anyway, so you may return to your seat.
No, I was just, in case there were any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Parish Council.
Yes, no, we have a statement from the Parish Council. Thank you. So I think Matthew is going to read out a statement on behalf of the Parish Council now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With your agreement, the Parish Council asked me to read out the statement that they had previously provided. Hursley Parish Council objects to this application as inappropriate overdevelopment in a compact residential area. The Parish Council is also heeding the serious concerns of neighbouring properties. Whilst the wish to increase the size of the garage at number 7, adopting the existing single pitch roofline is acceptable and already permitted under planning application 150287/FUL, the current proposal to develop a second storey with dormers to front and back is not acceptable. The large box-shaped rear dormer presented to neighbours at 6, 8 and 9 Heathcote Place, but not to number 7 itself, is overbearing and will cut both light and views from these properties. It is bulky in form and will be immediately visible to any person accessing the upper part of Heathcote Place, including number 5. In addition, it will be visible at first floor level to residents at numbers 4 and 10 Heathcote Place. The applicants say the development will have minimal impact on neighbouring properties. This is clearly not the case. It will directly impact the amenity of 6 other properties and will provide an unfortunate example which could lead to the destruction of a previously consistent and harmonious whole. As such, it conflicts with high quality places supplementary planning document SPD 2015, which states that for in Kirtledge Garage, the design needs to be high quality and respond positively to the context and the design of the other buildings within the development. Policy DM17 requires new development not to have an unacceptable adverse impact on adjoining land, uses or property by reason of overlooking, overshadowing or by being overbearing. In addition, the Council's High Quality Spaces SPD sets out guidance on amenity considerations for new development, including that it is important to ensure that new development does not have a detrimental impact on adjoining land, in particular neighbouring residential properties. Hursley Parish Council therefore accepts that the current application be refused. If the planning officer is minded to permit, we would therefore request that the application be referred to the Planning Committee. The proposal is contrary to Joint Core Strategy Policies CP13, Local Plan Part 2 Development Management and Site Allocations Policies DM15, DM16, DM17 and contrary to guidance as set out in the High Quality Places SPD 2015. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. And our final public contribution is from the supporter, Anna Budge. Thank you very much for coming along today. Sorry about the long wait. And you will have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak today in support of my planning application for development at our home in Hursley. My husband and I are looking to secure consent for further works to our garage, adding to our extant consent for its side extension granted in 2015. This follows a change in our working situation in the post-COVID era, with us both working from home, and like many people, we are looking to secure dedicated office space. Our current home only has a single study, and the works to alter and extend the garage would provide an additional workspace. Heathcote Place is a modern late 20th century residential development of a traditional style with a mix of detached, linked detached and terraced dwellings. The majority of the dwellings have been altered over time with front, side and rear extensions, including the properties adjoining our home. We therefore looked to propose a design approach which replicated existing extensions and alterations found in the close, with the front dormer being similar to those on our property and the rear dormer reflecting ones already found at number 2 and 18 Heathcote Place. We have proposed to use matching materials, have carefully considered the siting of the larger dormer, ensuring it is set down and away from the ridge and eaves lines and proportionate to the remaining roof space. We've included minimal fenestration to provide an overall design which is subservient and recessive and will be read entirely against the much larger mass and bulk of the 2-storey side extension to number 8, as has been seen in the photos provided by your officer. As your officer has stated in the report, the development will not be visible from the public realm and therefore has no adverse impact on the wider character and appearance of Heathcote Place. The very localised impact of the proposal does not result in any wider harm and is considered by your officer to be in keeping with the local area and compliant with the relevant development management policies DM15 and 16, along with the high quality places SPD. Turning to the issue of amenity impact, I would draw your attention to the careful and methodical assessment that your officer has undertaken in considering whether the proposal will result in any overshadowing, overbearing or overlooking impacts on numbers 6, 8 and 9 Heathcote Place. The clear conclusion is there is no adverse amenity issues, and again, it complies with the relevant development management policies. In respect to the visualisation that you have been shown, I would kindly request that committee members carefully consider this material with no evidence provided by the objector of it being to current visualisation standards set out by the Landscape Institute. It is clear that it cannot be considered accurate and is misleading in terms of scaling, materials and bulk. I would ask that members focus their consideration of the proposal on the accurate plans and elevations along with the photos provided by your officer. I would invite committee members to endorse your officer's recommendation for approval of this alteration to existing consent, with a proposal fully complying with the relevant development plan policies and SPD, and there being no material considerations which indicate a different decision should be taken.
Thank you very much. Good timing as well. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for Mrs. Budge? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just had one question, and there is obviously a condition to ensure that this is ancillary to the main building as well. But in regards to the shower facility on the downstairs, if you could just sort of expand on some of the reasoning behind that.
I mean, the primary reason for the proposal is an office for myself, but my husband is quite keen on potentially putting some gym equipment up there. So it's just in case, yeah, he does that and has a chair.
Excellent. No, thank you. Perfect.
Could I ask about the high windows? So the windows on the box bit at the top. Are they of the height that anybody could actually look out of them, or are they too high?
No, they are high level windows purely just to get some light. The main window will look in a northerly direction, so this is just to get a little more light into the space.
Thank you. Any more questions? No, thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Right, Cameron, did you want to add anything before we come to questions?
I've got nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, we'll take questions on the whole report. No questions? So we move to debate. Councillor Lamy.
Thank you, Chair. Knowing this area reasonably well, I am very concerned with the impact, which I think was ably described by the objectors, that this is out of keeping in the area and overdevelopment of that site, because the impact, the visual impact on the area is going to have a substantial effect on the neighbouring properties. And I am extremely concerned with that. And I think that's something that we need to take into consideration, because it does conflict with the planning policies as has been stated to us. I think Cameron's done a really, really good job on writing the report, but I do feel that we are opening the door for all sorts of problems if we start looking at that. If it was just the garage, as in the previous application that was approved, I have no problems with that, and I don't think anybody else would have problems with that. It's the sheer volume of the dormer that's sticking out and having the impact.
Thank you, Councillor Laming. Councillor White?
I have to agree with Councillor Laming about the overbearing nature of the rear dormer in particular. It's just across the whole roof, and it really does protrude from the roof line. And I think it has a big impact, particularly on number 8 and their view from the front of their house, I'd say.
Perhaps I could contribute here and remind members you don't actually have a right to a view. You have right to light, but not a right to a view. I've been to this site and driven around and looked at all the other dwellings around, and as was pointed out before, most of the properties have had various extensions, and most of the properties have garages in the front of the gardens. So it's a very blocky area anyway, in terms of there's bits of vegetation, there's bits of buildings, you know, it's all quite close together. And I've looked very carefully at this application, and I think that you mustn't be taken down a blind alley with the views that we've been presented from the objectors, because actually if you look at the materials that are being proposed and the actual size of the rear dormer that is being proposed, there will be no sight lines out of it, so there's no question of overlooking or anything. And secondly, it is proposed to be in very sympathetic materials, which in time will completely disappear. So it will extend the size of the garage, but I don't believe that it will create sufficient harm to turn down this application. We have to think about the harm that is caused by an application. So I think, given the circumstances of the whole sort of situation of the area and the materials and the consideration that's been given, and that dormer is not as big as the pictures show from the objector. It's quite big, but it is set back, it's recessive, and it does apply. I think it does follow our planning policies. So given those factors, I am content with supporting the officer recommendation. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I echo many of your comments. I too have looked carefully at this application. I do agree with the objectors in regards to the dormer roof. However, I would sort of more strongly agree with them if this were a 2-floor extension or a larger building footprint, that therefore would impact further on neighbouring properties. In regards to overshadowing, having had a look at it as well, there is ample vegetation screening from the eastern side of the property, and at that sort of solar maximum, the only property that I believe would be impacted significantly by this would be the front of number 7 itself. As well as with the overlooking aspect, I'm satisfied with the window height. Perhaps it's sort of obviously neighbourly cooperation can go together in regards to further planting to mitigate any sort of overbearing nature or perceived overbearing nature from the road aspect. But I don't believe it is overbearing to the properties themselves. Therefore, I'll be supporting the application.
So if there's no more contribution to debate, we will move to the decision. This recommendation is for approval. So can I see all those in favour of approving this application? And those against? And any abstentions? So that application is approved. Thank you very much. We will now take a break for lunch and return at 2 p.m. Thank you.